Salutations, people! Welcome to Page 3 Killers, Murders That Went Unnoticed, a podcast where we dive into the murder cases that went unnoticed by our nation's newspapers.
Hi, Shay.
Hi, John.
Hi, guys.
Hi, guys. Welcome back.
And welcome to episode 16 of Page 3 Murders. Page 3 Killers, Murders That Went Unnoticed.
One of these days we'll get it right. One of these days. Maybe second season.
Yeah, we'll give it a year.
And yes, today's episode 16, and we are talking about the stalking case of Mary Lynn Witherspoon.
Well, hold on, I thought her name was Page 3 Killers, not Page 3 Stalkers.
It is Page 3 Killers. I'm not going to say anything because this case is really interesting, but
We're changing our name.
It's going to get a little dangerous up in here with this case.
Not for me.
Well, not for you, but for people of the feminine persuasion, definitely.
I can guess so.
So, how about we talk about today's drink special before we get started?
Fantastic.
In case you guys notice, here's our cocktail for today. John, as you can see, is not partaking any of the libations for this evening.
That would be correct.
Because he partied a little too hard yesterday.
No, I didn't party too hard. I got too old.
Well,
I partied the same as I always party. I just can't handle it anymore.
Well, why don't you tell everybody about this drink so we can get started?
Alright, well, we're calling it the Apple Cart Mule. You'll find out why here in a second. It is based off of a Moscow Mule, which is based off of a regular mule. So we're using ginger beer as our sweetener. And we are also using, specifically, Absolute Apple Juice Vodka.
So good.
And really, I mean, all you really need to do for this drink is you put 1 part of the apple juice vodka and 2 parts ginger beer, and just mix that up with some ice. Don't even need to shake. Well, you're not going to shake it because it's ginger beer. It's carbonated, all that good jazz.
It's absolutely fabulous. For a custom drink that we have this week, it is amazing. I have to say, it's not super sweet. And I usually prefer my drink sweet.
That's a pretty sweet drink.
Well, as far as like a pina colada sweet.
I mean, maybe not.
Definitely not as sweet as a pina colada. But it is terrifically well balanced.
I don't know, it did taste good.
It was delicious. And that was what, equal parts?
No, 1 part of the vodka, 2 parts ginger beer.
All right, guys. So you got the measurements there.
And you want to use good ginger beer for this one, not ginger ale.
Yes. Yes, I recommend that. It gives you more of that bite of the ginger.
If you really want to cheat, you can kind of use bold, like the bold ginger ales.
Oh my god, that gave me such heartburn when you bought that last time. He was being sweet, and it didn't work out. So now let's get into our case. So this takes place during 2003. So we have our news stories for 2003. And these were some pretty interesting things that happened.
We done went to Iraq.
Yeah, we done went to Iraq for 2003. So a lot of our news stories are going to come out of there. We got some U.S. Based ones that aren't war related, but everything major that was focused on by the news was definitely Iraq War. So the first thing I have on here was that our newly created United States Department of Homeland Security begins operations on January 24th of 2003. Did you know that?
No, I did not. Well, I knew it didn't exist up until after 9/11.
Yep. Well, their official start date of when they started working was January 24th of that year.
Good enough.
Yep. Then they slowly started to steal away our rights.
And then a TSA came along, and then...
And the CIA started listening in on all of our phone calls and emails.
And everything you did was a violation of some Homeland Security thing, so they could arrest you for anything.
Exactly. But let's get moving on to the next one. So on February 1st of that year, we had the space shuttle Columbia disintegrates over Texas upon re-entry, killing all 7 astronauts on board.
I don't know why, but I do not. I remember this
remember
happening.
this.
No, I remember it. I actually I didn't know there was anyone on board. I thought it was unmanned.
No, there was 7 astronauts on board.
If I remember correctly, they had the wrong entry angle, and there's too much friction, burned up the spacecraft.
Okay, that's interesting to know. But yeah, I don't remember hearing about this. But at this time, I was carrying a full course load in college.
No, you weren't. You
with printmaking.
You hadn't even graduated high school yet. Calm down.
Oh my God! Yeah. Whoops. Yeah. You know what? I was living my best high school life.
Hey, there you go.
You know, I was working like almost full time at CVS while attending high school.
That's funny because so was I.
And we worked. The stores were very close to each other. His was like Queen Anne Plaza, and mine was like at 5 Points, which was like maybe 2 miles away from each other. And I covered shifts at his store, and we never met. Or we might have seen each other, but we don't remember it. It's insane. Insane, babe.
Insane in a membrane.
All right, so the next one takes place over the course of about a week. All right, so it starts on May 4th and runs through the 10th. We have some major severe weather outbreaks that spawns more tornadoes in a week in U.S. history. And it was a total of 393 tornadoes reported across 19 states.
I remember this one too. This one was
This was big. I remember this one because I remember raising money for a lot of the people that were like the Red Cross that were trying to help people.
Yeah.
So I remember that one I remember that more than I remember the space shuttle for some reason. Now, happier note, Elf the movie was released in movie theaters that year.
Why is this on our list of news?
You know what? Everyone I know loves the movie Elf. I personally can't stand it. I hate that movie. Do not come at me in the comments on this one. But if anybody does come at me in the comments, you are welcome. Because nobody has commented yet.
Where do we have a comment section?
On YouTube.
Oh, okay.
No comments in YouTube.
I commented.
Yeah, well, you don't count. You're on the show.
Anyway, tell me again, why did that make our news section?
Because I know a lot of people that love that movie, and it's a big deal to them.
Okay.
Now, what is actually big news is you had the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court in Goodridge versus the Department of Health ruled that the anti-gay laws against same-sex marriage was unconstitutional in Massachusetts.
I don't think they can do that. Can they do that? Can a state rule that a federal law is unconstitutional?
I believe they can. And then it gets sent through the loop back to...
Good for them.
It gets sent back through the loop back to the federal government, goes back up, and then they have to re-vote on it. Kind of thing. Now, we have some big things start to happen with that Iraq war situation going on at this time. So, U.S. President George W. Bush makes a state visit to London in midst of anti-war protests that were massive. I remember these. I remember hearing about these and seeing these on TV. The next thing we had was the end of Operation Iron Hammer, Iraq war thing. In an attempt, that was the attempt to end the Iraqi insurgency. And then you had the end of Operation Red Dawn, resulting in the capture of Saddam Hussein in Tikrit.
I believe it's
Tikrit. So that was kind of a big thing. And then you had an outbreak of mad cow disease out in Washington State.
Oh, I remember this one too.
Yeah, I remember that one. And then there was also several small breakouts across Europe at this time as well.
Yeah, the price of ground beef went way up.
Oh yeah, I remember eating a lot of chicken at this time. A lot of chicken.
Also, I didn't know we caught Saddam within, what is that? It's only a few months. I thought it took so long in that.
No, the one that took us a lot longer was Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, I know there was bin Laden, but I didn't think we caught Saddam until like 2005-ish.
No.
But I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Now, for our seedy side of 2003, this was a big year in crime. I'm talking big. There was a lot of things, and a bunch of them I had heard about. So I was kind of like, wow, I didn't realize they all happened within that year. So we're going to start it off. We have FBI agents raid the corporate headquarters of Health South Corporation in Birmingham, Alabama, on suspicion of mass corporate fraud led by the company's top executives.
Was this the Enron stuff? Or the beginning?
Yeah. I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have that stuff going on. December 19th, after being arrested, Guatemalan Ricardo Alfonso Serna commits suicide at a police station in San Bernardino County, California, by shooting himself in the head with a concealed handgun. How he got that gun in there, I do not know.
He took it in.
Yeah. But who misses that during the pat-down? Like, where did he have that hidden? I can think of some uncomfortable places.
It's not that hard.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, on a pat down, if there's no metal detection, if all they're doing is pat downs, yeah. Wear a pair of boots, shove it inside of his boot.
Okay, there you go. Then we have Martha Stewart and her broker are indicted for using privileged investment information that obstructs a federal investigation. And then they obstruct a federal investigation. She then resigned as chairperson and chief executive officer of Martha Stewart Living.
She done got railroaded.
Yeah.
So the only thing they got her on was lying to the police. That's like the obstruction. So she never broke the law, technically. Except for she lied to police because she wanted to sound a little bit better.
True. I still think it's kind of like stupid, like I guess they were trying to get her on like investment fraud or something like that, or using like privileged information and telling that to people so that they could invest in something.
They were trying to get her on insider trading.
Yeah. So, and I think that's so stupid.
Well,
not that insider investing is stupid, but I think it's stupid that that's what they were trying to get her for, and they didn't get her for anything other than than
Yeah,
lying to the
which-
police.
This is a famous case of why you should never talk to the police without a lawyer.
Absolutely. I don't know why. Like, why did she talk to them without a lawyer?
Because she had done nothing wrong.
She literally had done nothing wrong.
So she didn't do anything.
No.
So somebody else did.
They couldn't. She was never
they
charged
couldn't.
with any other crime other than lying
Okay.
to the police about a crime she never committed.
Okay.
She done got railroaded. But then she met Snoop Dogg.
Yeah. And
So
that
that's
is
cool.
like the greatest friendship I have ever seen. Have you seen like videos of them just like hanging out?
Yeah.
Like she like cooks things for him and like they're just like they're so cute.
So for the rest of the world, it worked out.
Yeah, it was amazing.
For her, she was on house arrest,
how did they meet exactly? Like,
I have no idea. I'm assuming that they did something about being in prison.
like they were like on work release together or something, or
I don't know.
well, she was under
You can
house
look into
arrest,
it.
right?
Yeah. You have to look into it, babe.
Yeah.
Google it.
All right. And then we have the Ennis shooting. A gunman goes on a shooting spree in Madison County, Montana. That gunman killed one man and injured 6 others before being involved in a chase and shootout with responding police. He was sentenced to one of the longest prison sentences ever handed down in Montana state. He received 11 life terms. 11 life sentences.
It's a long time.
That's a long time. You're never getting out.
Also, if you shoot one person and hit 6 others, like, you killed everyone in town.
This is Montana.
Yeah, you've driven through Montana, right?
I have.
Is it just like small town, then nothing for like 100 some miles, and then
Yes. That perfectly explains it.
that would drive me crazy. Is that what most of the Midwest? See, I've only ever seen the East Coast.
So,
Okay.
let me put this. I stopped in Butte, Montana, which I believe is
Their second or third largest city. And it's smaller than the town we live in.
That's crazy.
Yes, there's one subway. That's where I eat. Well, I think there's a college, too. So it was a college town, and it was still smaller than ours.
That seems the par for the Midwest to me. That's what my understanding of the Midwest would be. Is like just podunk towns with like maybe a college.
That podunk, it was just not big, and it was really
Spread out.
Okay.
Like, even once you got out of, like, I don't know, the couple of downtown streets, like, everyone had like half an acre to an acre. Like, it was
That's crazy.
it was very different situation than what
It makes you understand how large the United States really is. That we just have these massive land areas where nobody lives.
Yeah, having driven across the country twice.
That's crazy. I don't know if I would have the will to live if I had to drive cross country like that.
Well, the first time was fun. I did it over like 10 days or whatever.
Like,
the second time sucked.
We've done the drive down to Florida from here, which is like 18 hours.
I've also done that
In one shot.
Yeah, you did tell me about that.
Yeah, just
it makes you not want to drive at all for like the rest of the time, right, babe?
Drove down to Florida for one day, then drove back with a friend.
Okay, we're gonna move on.
I had a wedding to go to.
That's crazy. All right, so let's move on. The next story, though, I found really interesting. I might look this one up in more detail. This one happens in Irving, California. Joseph Hunter Park goes into a Albertsons and basically kills 2 people with a sword before being shot to death by police.
So he's like LARPing.
I guess so. I think he was probably super high and thought he was like in some like ninja movie and just took a sword, a Japanese sword, to a bunch of people. In like a state of confusion. I'm hoping it was a state of confusion.
Wait, is that what you like read about it? Or was
This guy just like, nah, he just got super pissed off.
No, that's what my understanding of it is.
Like he was
Yeah.
on like PCP or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just went nuts. I found that one interesting. Now, the next one we have is Douglas Williams, and he goes on a shooting rampage at a Lockheed Martin plant in Meridian, Mississippi, and he kills 6 people and injures 8 before committing suicide.
See, now this, I don't understand how he got a gun inside it.
I don't understand how he got. I mean, it's like.
This is Lockheed Martin post 9/11.
Yeah. Like I do not understand how that happened. Maybe he took it off of a security guard.
Must have shot him before he went through security.
Yeah.
Because security at those places is like lockdown.
Yeah. So, but that one, like I told you, this was a crazy year. Now the next one I have heard about quite a few times. I've known about this one. There's documentaries upon documentaries about this one. On August 28th, Brian Douglas Wells, a pizza delivery man in Erie, Pennsylvania, is killed after a bomb fastened around his neck explodes. Wells was forced to rob a bank with a bomb collar on before it was detonated remotely.
No, but was he complicit?
I think to a certain extent he was. It was found that he was complicit. In the act, he did not know that it was a real bomb, though. Until it started beeping, like it was armed, and then he started to get concerned. And then the police showed up and made the whole situation worse.
It's definitely a Law and Order episode.
There's a really good one that I'm going to try to watch. It is called Mastermind on Netflix, about the people that built it and planned this whole thing. So, and that is it for our news topics for tonight. Or this morning, whatever time you guys are listening. So what do you think about the news, babe?
It was exciting.
It was. It was fly by the seat of your pants now.
I don't know, there was a lot of it though.
Yeah, there was a lot. Now we're going to move into our case. Now, like I said, this case takes place in Charleston, South Carolina in 2003. And we're going to be talking about Mary Lynn Witherspoon, and she is a teacher from Charleston, South Carolina, and she was stalked for 22 years by her ex-boyfriend's son.
That's a weird person to stalk someone.
Yeah, it's crazy. So we're gonna get into it right now. So her early life. All right. So Mary Lynn was born in 1950. She had a sister. Her name was Jackie, and she was a few years older than her. Everyone who knew her said that she was a kind and caring person.
What?
She was in her early years. She was a beauty queen. You know, she competed in beauty pageants. She was a straight A student. She graduated from high school as her class valedictorian. She was a well-loved French teacher at a Charleston academy. Now, she married a doctor and had a daughter named Jane. And Mary Lynn and her husband didn't have a happy marriage, from what I read. And they decided a few years later to get divorced. So when they divorced, she moved back to Charleston. So she loved Charleston, South Carolina. She loved the small southern town feel of Charleston, which we definitely got when we were there the last time. I mean, it's a small city.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have an ordinance.
Yeah, you
in
can't
their
build.
downtown.
Yeah, you can't build anything higher than like 3 stories.
It's 3 or 4 stories. I can't remember.
Yeah, so it's
everything's like there's no skyscrapers in downtown Charleston.
yeah, it's very quaint, very quiet. I got the feeling it was very quiet, but true. We went during COVID. Yeah, it was the first. We were like what 6 months into COVID.
And it was in July, so.
Yeah, so it was pretty quiet there though.
Yeah, that place is usually popping.
And she loved Charleston. She loved the quaint little streets. She loved to just go out and walk around the city. And she loved her nice little church that she attended every Sunday. I have no idea how to pronounce that. She went to a French church.
Oh, so it could be pronounced anything.
Yeah.
Like,
And I'm not even gonna attempt it. But yeah.
Huguenot.
Yeah,
Okay,
her French Huguenot church.
Pretty sure you're not supposed to pronounce a T.
Huguenot. Okay, we'll go with Huguenot. Now,
It could be pronounced squirrel. It's freaking French. Who knows?
now that she's divorced, she moved back to Charleston, and she starts getting back out in the dating scene. So she starts dating around, as women do when they're newly single after a divorce. And it was said by many people that were interviewed after all of this happened that people were attracted to her, not just because of her looks, but her personality. And she quite often had to, beat men off with quote unquote a stick. She had a lot of men that found her attractive, her personality and everything, and they wanted to date her. So she was a very popular person. And in 1981, Mary Lynn meets Edmonds Tennent Brown III, who was an attorney.
Sounds like a good attorney name.
I know. It sounds like an excellent attorney name. Now, Edmund was a member of one of Charleston's oldest families. So, like one of the original families. Like, pretty high up in the hierarchy of Charleston society.
Yeah, I mean, he uses the third.
Yes.
In his name, so,
Listen, my boss named his kid after himself, and that's tough. Just having all those numbers after somebody's name. It gets complicated. Now, like Mary Lynn, he was a single father of 2. Now, from what I read, his wife just up and left him and the kids. Just up and disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to her. So I'm thinking there's something a little suspicious going on right there, babe. Now, when they start dating in 1981, Edmund's son, Tennant, was 10, and his daughter, Molly, was 8. And everyone said that Edmund was smitten with Mary Lynn. He just adored her. He loved her daughter. She was just amazing. He was so head over heels for her. Now, he gave Mary Lynn a lot of support as a single parent, and he helped her raise her daughter Jane. Now, sometimes it seemed to many, including his children, that Edmund cared more for Jane than he did for his own children. Now, this is a guy, he would get up in the morning and go over to Mary Lynn's house to make Jane and Mary Lynn breakfast, and then he would take Jane to school. He would drop her off at school.
It's kind of messed up if you think about it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's nice he's helping her, but...
It's
like,
a little
you
weird.
do have your own children.
Yeah. So, he proposes to Mary Lynn, and she says no. And that continues on for about 8 years. He asks her, hey, let's get married. I love you. Let's get married. And every time she says no. And it was not that she didn't care for Edmund. So her sister and her daughter, in interviews that they gave, they said that it wasn't that she didn't care for Edmund, but there was something just she wasn't comfortable with his children. Like there was just something not right about his kids. Okay?
Probably because they didn't have a father.
That's true. or at least a father that like
Seemed
cared
to care about
enough, you know? So, you know, they don't get married, all that jazz. Now, Edmund's daughter had a little bit of a jealousy thing with Jane and they didn't get along because of that. So she was like jealous of the attention that everybody paid Jane and not her, you know, like they sort of forgot. So I can understand his daughter's animosity towards Mary Lynn and Jane. But the younger tenant, he was just odd. All right. So I read a lot of stuff about this kid. He was pretty messed up. Like he was just really weird. He had odd behavior. And over the years, that just increased. Like, so I read that Mary Jane was like always very nice to him, because she felt bad for him. Just because he was very antisocial. He didn't have any friends, you know, that just basically had a lot of personality issues, that his father was not dealing with. So some of these odd behaviors were as follows. So he would pop up at Mary Lynn's house on her porch, or he would ride his bike by her house, or appear near her driveway. So she would like speak to him when he was there, but she would not invite him into their house.
That's wrong.
Like, it's wrong?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't know, but
Like, you don't know the situation. Like, they're not together anymore.
Oh, this
Edmund,
is after.
Yeah, Edmund and Mary Lynn, after 8 years, they separated.
So then he's like 18.
Yeah, he's like a teenager, yeah.
Okay.
Like late teens, yeah. And he rides his bike by her house. He stands outside of her house and just watches her house. And slowly he just starts showing up more and more often. And just stands there staring at her, staring at the house. He doesn't say anything. Like, she'll talk to him, but he won't say anything back. And he just stares at this house and at her. Now, Mary Lynn temporarily moved away from Charleston with her daughter Jane to Mount Pleasant. And somehow, Tennant found out where they were living. They have no idea how he figured it out. But then he just starts popping up at that house now. He just shows up. It's a completely different town.
That's scary.
He starts showing up there, up at the house, and it's really weird. They're like, how did he know that we moved? Like, how did he even know where we moved to? Like, they're not in a phone book, nothing like that. But at this time, like, there's nothing really criminal about his behavior.
It's just creepy.
He hasn't made any threats. He's just being creepy. He's just being a creeper. Just a weird ass kid, teenager. Just a weird ass teenager, not doing anything criminal, just standing around in her backyard or her front yard, just creeping. I just used creepy a lot in that sentence, which was really weird. But this is about to get weird and very discomforting for them. Okay, so this is about to get worse. Now, like we said, Tennant was in his late teens at that time, and she really saw him still as that little boy that just had issues making friends, and so she didn't want to cause like any problems for him. So she just felt bad for him. You know, she didn't see this behavior as dangerous in any way. And to Mary Lynn, because she's a teacher, she's like, you know, I've had this happen before where, you know, young students, you know, they have little crushes on teachers. Like they were captivated by her charm, you know, kind of thing. So she'd had students that had crushes on her before that wrote her like little love letters, and she's like, you know, it never amounts to anything, you know, it's just, you know, they grow up and they grow out of it and they move on, kind of thing.
She was wrong.
Yeah, that did not happen for this boy. Now, in 1989, a year after she broke it off with Edmund and the things strange started to happen, Mary Lynn visited her mother's home a few hours away from Charleston. And when she came back to the house after a walk with her mother's house had been broken into, but nothing appeared to be missing. Like their purses were in plain view. There was cash, jewelry. Nothing was missing. Now Mary Lynn went up and to her room and she checked her belongings. Her suitcase was still zipped, so she's like, okay, so it didn't look like anybody went through anything. So she leaves and heads back to Charleston, and when she got home, she started to unpack her suitcase. She unzipped her suitcase, and to her shock...
Wait, was he inside?
No.
Oh.
Somebody had stolen some of her clothes and her makeup. So she immediately, instead of calling the police, like I would have called the police, I would have been like, the fuck? I'm calling the cops. No, she calls her mom. And she tells her all about, you know, my stuff's missing. Like, some of my stuff is gone. Like, my makeup, you know, my blouse, my, you know, underwear. Like, it's all missing. And to Mary Lynn, it wasn't just the fact that somebody stole some of her clothes and makeup. It was a violation. She felt it was a violation of her personal self, because it was a violation of her belongings. And this incident was very disturbing to her. She became very worried and scared about the situation. Now, right after the event, Mary Lynn's mother was like, I know it had to be him. It must be Tennant. So she picked up the phone and she called him. And she, Jackie Olsen, her daughter, Mary Lynn's sister, said in an interview that her mother told Tennant this. She said, "I know that you broke in and that you got Mary Lynn's things out of her suitcase. Now bring them back." Which he did. The same day, he dropped off the bag of Mary Lynn's belongings that he stole at her mother's and left it on her mother's carport.
He's not very good at this.
No, well, he's disturbed, so it's just really, his behavior is just really odd. It doesn't make sense, like a criminal, like somebody who's out to do something criminal, they're gonna maintain that they didn't do anything but this is somebody who's not in their right mind. He's not sane. This is not sane behavior. So he brings the items back, and Mary Lynn decides that she's not going to press charges for him stealing them since he brought everything back. She's not going to press charges. And she basically told her sister and her mom, he's a quirk. I've known him since he was a kid. These are just his quirky ways. He's not dangerous. So I'm just going to leave it alone. Now, in 1991, he just seemingly disappears. Just off the face of the earth. He's not coming to her house anymore. He's not, coming by. She doesn't see him on the street when she's out. No creepy phone calls, nothing like that. So she doesn't see him for 8 years. And over that time, Mary Lynn relaxes and, she stops looking over her shoulder for Tennant.
And that's the end of our story.
I wish that was the end. That would be a fabulous ending to what is going to become a very tragic story. So I'm just going to keep going. So she's concentrating on her life, her job and her family. Now, she got into a couple of really great things. So she starts taking a group of students to France that year. Now, these are kids that come from impoverished families that wouldn't have the opportunity to be exposed to culture outside of the United States without her assistance in this. So she takes them to France, gets them this exposure of the French culture, something that she loves. It's her passion. And then she also starts doing volunteer work with terminally ill children at the local children's hospital in Charleston.
This lady seems way too nice.
This woman was an amazing woman. She just, from everything that I read, she was very selfless. She just did a lot for everyone else. And, she just loved her quiet little life. Now, in 2001, he's suddenly back in her life. She sees him standing out in her backyard. He's now a 30-year-old man at this point. He's now 30 years old. And just like before, when he was a teenager, he shows up again and again, and he's out in her yard. Just staring up at her bedroom window, staring at her front door. He watches her walk to and from her car, just from... And everything that I read said that, it wasn't like he was trying to be sneaky and try to be unnoticed. He wanted her to see him. So he would stand out in the open, here I am, You can see me. I'm right here. So he would just do that, just intimidate her, like every day.
All day, every day.
All day, every day. Now, at this time, Mary Lynn's family is becoming quite concerned by this. And some of her friends even called Edmund about his son's behavior.
You would think that there'd be a lot of ongoing discussions with this man.
Oh, yeah. Apparently, there were quite a few discussions. And Mary Lynn's sister, Jackie, described in an interview one of those calls. She said that was made by Mary Lynn's friends. And it was, "Listen, Edmund, you got to do something about this kid. He's driving Mary Lynn crazy. He's bugging her. He's stalking her. You've got to do something." But at this time, Edmund is not in contact with his son. He has little to nothing to do with his son at this point. So there's nothing he's able to do to deter his son from his actions. Like, he doesn't know where his son's living at this point. Doesn't have a phone number for him. Just,
I mean, he's a 30-year-old man.
yeah, he's a grown adult. You can't tell your, well, you can, but they don't have to listen to you. Kind of thing. So he was not much help at all with this situation. Now, out of all of these phone calls that are made, I'm just shocked that the one important phone call that should have happened doesn't happen. Nobody calls a fucking cop. Nobody reports any of this to the police. I mean, this has been going on since what? 1981?
Yeah. So,
Like,
20 years.
Like, that's insane that he's been doing this behavior for 20 years and not one time has she called a cop or anything.
Yeah, you think at this point, like,
When it came back, you'd think that there'd be
Yeah. Like, at least,
some police involvement.
yeah, at least, starting in 2001, there should have been some activity. And I know a lot of the problem with stalking cases is that there really is no, like, one place to go and get information. Like, there's no, like hotline that you can call into to get basic information on how to protect yourself from a stalker and this kind of situation. It's sort of a gray area because it's not a crime to follow somebody from place to place. It's not a crime to stand outside somebody's house. It's just intimidating.
No, it is a crime.
I mean, not like there's one instance of it that's not a crime, but
Yeah, and the problem is that
this
you
guy's
have to
not
be
even
able
trying to hide
to
it.
prove that he's doing this. And, so the recommendation that I found, they're like, listen, just document everything that they do. Photograph,
Get a camera.
videotape. Yeah, but unless you watch true crime TV like I do, like, it's not common, not known information to do that.
How would you think it'd be common knowledge, though? I'm just being honest.
It should be. It really should. But what were you saying about if you leave your door unlocked, are you asking to be robbed or not? Like when we were talking about the rape thing.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that just because you leave your, like, you would always want to lock your door.
Yeah.
Right, and just because, like, that doesn't, just because you've locked your door doesn't mean that you're saying that it's okay to rob people and who don't lock their doors.
Yeah.
It was kind of a long, convoluted philosophical argument I don't want to get into right now.
Yeah. But yeah, so that one phone call that should have been made to the police at this point doesn't happen. And so not only is she doesn't have any police support, she doesn't, like, Edmund, the father, he's not helpful at all. But at the same time, she says to herself, listen, there's nothing criminal about him standing outside of my house. Until 2003. Now, 2003, it was a nice day in April of 2003 when Mary Lynn goes out to her laundry room. So, just to explain her house, so her laundry room was like separate. It was like a little building that was separate from her house, like in her backyard. Like it was separated by like a hallway type thing. And she would have to go out of her house, unlock the door to go into her laundry room, where her washer and dryer were, and she would bring her clothes into the house, you know?
Seems really inconvenient. What happens if it's raining
out? Well, it's a historic home, so then you're not getting your laundry there. If it's raining. But
seems like a terrible idea.
Yeah. So she goes into the dryer to get some of her clothes out, and she realizes all of her underwear is missing out of the dryer.
All of them?
All of it.
Jeez, it's not even just like, oh, it's missing one.
Yeah, like, it's not like just one pair went missing. Like, it's all of your thongs, all of your panties, everything.
See, I told you,
Brawls.
he was bad at this. If
Yeah.
you just start taking one at a time. Over time, you might get suspicious, but it takes a while.
Now, she realizes that it must have been Tennant. He must have been in her home. And like before, she could have called 911. She could have had him arrested, but she didn't. She didn't have him arrested this time. She just went and got new clothes. She just went and got new underwear. Didn't make a big deal of it. Now, Mary Lynn decided instead of, getting police involved, she was going to, do things to protect herself. So she had a sophisticated alarm system added to her house with a panic button on a keychain.
Yeah.
Yep. She started carrying mace after she went to a gun shop, and they advised her that she should have pepper spray. So she started carrying mace. I don't understand why they wouldn't say, yeah, this is a 45, this is a 22, these will protect you.
Well, I mean,
she wasn't comfortable with it.
Having both is the right answer.
Yeah.
But also, if you're just not comfortable with it, then
Pepper spray is usually pretty effective.
Yeah.
People do not react well to pepper spray.
Now, eventually, she did talk to some local police officers that she was friendly with through church and through the school. And she asked them to, if they would just keep an eye on her house. So they would just do random drive-bys and just check on her house throughout the day. Now, it's not long before Tennant does something else. Now, in July of 2003, Tennant crossed the line of his stalking when one day Mary Lynn came home from school and he was in her backyard. So she spoke to him and she told him, "I'm sorry, I can't do a visit today. I'm running to PTA." So she went inside, changed, and left for her PTA meeting. Well, the next day she saw him again in her backyard, but this time he had a pillowcase that was filled with her clothing that he had stolen out of her laundry room again. And this time she was stunned. Like, she'd finally caught him red-handed stealing her stuff. Now, what would be the normal behavior for a criminal that's just been caught in a criminal act, babe? What do you think would be the logical thing for him to do?
Kill her. No witnesses.
No. The logical thing is, like, would be to run, right?
After you killed her, yeah.
Well, no, that doesn't happen. They stand there like deer caught in a headlight, both of them, just staring at each other. And then he just turns around and leaves her yard without saying anything. Just like creepy Tennant does. And this behavior just terrifies her. And her sister Jackie said that she was fearful. You could hear it in her voice. And she told her, I said, he knows you know that it was him. And if you don't do something, what is he gonna do if he comes back? And Mary Lynn had replied, "I don't know what to do." Now, she tossed it around like, should I get the police involved or risk the wrath of, my stalker? Like she wasn't sure what to do.
The problem is she's basically let him get away with this for 20 years.
Exactly. She's let him get away with this behavior for 20 years. I think it's 22 years now. And she's never put her foot down and just said, enough is enough. No. Now, she expressed that she was afraid of retaliation. That if she pressed charges for him breaking into her laundry room, that he would do something to her friends or her family or even her. So she didn't know what to do in that regard. But finally, after, her family and her friends talked to her about this situation, she reports it to the police. For now, after 22 years, finally she's getting the police involved. Now, he was picked up on the burglary charges, and he was placed in jail, basically. So they did a background check on him, and it didn't come up with much, okay? So he had spent a few years in the Coast Guard, and then he drifted from one menial job to the next. It would turn out, though, that he had run-ins with the law previously for basically breaking and entering, car theft, nothing too dangerous, okay? So he's broken into homes with nobody there. He's stolen cars. So he hasn't hurt anybody physically besides taking some of their possessions. But unlike all the other times he's been arrested before, this time he doesn't make bail. So he sits in jail awaiting sentencing. Now, now that he's in prison, she feels safer, but then she realizes, the authorities are basically debating, on Tennant's future. Like, can we really keep him in a regular jail, or does he need to be somewhere for mental health intervention? Does he need to be in an asylum or something? Kind of thing, instead of a prison. So she was very aware that he could be back on the streets at any time. So she registered herself for a new program in the state of South Carolina, and that is the Victims Notification System, which is called VINE. And that system would notify her when he is being transferred or released so that she could be prepared.
That's nice of them.
Yeah. Like, it's a great system if it works.
But it's the government, so it never works.
Exactly. So the idea of this system is that if Tennant is released, somebody would phone her right away, and then they would also send a notice by mail to her address. So over the next 4 months, Mary Lynn relaxes and enjoys the Charleston summer with her friends and her family. She hangs out with her daughter, and she gets ready to go back to teaching in the fall. Everything's going great. Perfect. She's happy. She's just living her life. Now, school started back up. It's now November. All right. November 14th, to be precise. Now, Mary Lynn does something that's out of character for her. She missed work without a calling.
No call, no show.
Yep. So Jane receives a call from her mom's best friend saying, your mom didn't show up to school today and she didn't call for a substitute. So Jane's first thought was that something had to be wrong. Something terrible had to have happened to her. She wouldn't just not go into work. Like, her job was her passion. She loved teaching French. There's no way that she would have missed school. So the principal and one of the staff members goes to her house. Now, when they get there, they find that her car is gone. So at first they think, oh, maybe she just went off somewhere. But that just seems really out of her typical behavior. Now, they knock on her door and they don't get an answer. So they walk around the house, the outside. There's no broken glass, no evidence of anyone having broken in. It just, nothing looks out of place. So Jane, Mary Lynn's daughter, and her husband begin the drive to Charleston. And she authorizes the police to basically break into her mother's home. Because she is adamant, she feels something is not right, something is wrong. Her mother is not that kind of person to just not go to work. And with all this stuff going on, her mind instantly jumped to the worst case scenario. And she felt that there was something wrong. Now, Sergeant Barry Goldstein, from the Charleston Police Department, said that Mary Lynn was a person that kept a very well-kept home. In the kitchen, they found food on a plate. So there were eggs on a plate in the kitchen. He discovered shoes, an apple, and a watch lying on the floor inside the door. So cautiously, the police went up the stairs to her second floor, and they entered Mary Lynn's sitting room. and they were greeted with chaos. So there were drawers, and the closets had been gone through. Items were just strewn across the floor. And then they see the door to the bathroom, where they find inside that second floor bathroom, they find Mary Lynn naked in her tub, dead. Her feet and hands were bound with tape. She had been strangled. They did find a knife nearby, but it was not used on her. And she had been raped. So now, on November 14th, this very exclusive neighborhood on Trinidad Street woke to the horrifying news that one of its most cherished citizens had been raped and murdered in her own home. And the police started to suspect that it might not be the only murder that occurred.
Really?
Really?
This is a twist.
Now, right away, Mary's family thought there's only one person that we know that could have done this, Tennant. But he's in jail. Right?
Or is he?
Or, yeah.
Dun dun dun.
Now, there was more evidence which led the police in a whole other direction from her family. Now, police were asking if Mary Lynn was the only victim. Were there more victims? And they were asking this question because not far from Mary Lynn's body, police found a purse that belonged to a neighbor, Elizabeth Brackett. And at this time, they had to make sure that this person was not a victim of a crime. So he sends a couple of officers over to the address listed on the license in that purse, and they were afraid that they might find another victim. Now, Stanley Friedman, Mary Lynn Witherspoon's family friend, said they thought there was some random murder in the neighborhood, and the thought was that there was some random murder in the neighborhood, which was very scary. I mean, stay in the house and don't walk your dog in the yard, scary. Beyond the yard, scary. Police were able to make contact with Elizabeth Brackett, and she was fine. So she was not dead. She told them that she was watching television between the hours of 11:30 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. the night before when she heard some strange noises. But she did not get up to investigate. And in the morning, she found that her pocketbook was missing out of her laundry room that morning when she got up. And who do we know that likes to go into women's laundry rooms?
But it's the wrong house.
I know. And that's what the police are asking. But if the killer broke into two homes, why did he only target Mary Lynn and attack her? Like, if he's gonna take the time to break into another house, why is he not gonna attack the other woman? And Mary Lynn's daughter and family are like, well, duh, it's because it's her stalker. But he's supposed to be in prison. So they asked the police to check with the prison system to see if he's still in prison. So the police check with the Department of Corrections, and they find that no, Tennant had been released several days prior.
Never would have guessed.
Now, I'm like, I was like, well, obviously I'm not as shocked as her family was to find out that he was not in jail. But I'm sure that at the time of this, I would have been shocked, you know? And the question, so she was supposed to be informed that he was being released. And so they wanted to find out, had somebody tried to call her, like, why wouldn't she tell them that, you know, that she knew he was being released. So they check her message machine. And on her answering machine was a message from an automated system regarding his release. So they did see that that they tried to call her. The only problem was that the automated system had no way of knowing if Mary Lynn actually received the warning. And then once they look into it, they actually found out that the Vine system sent her the wrong message and told her that Edmonds Tennent Brown had been transferred to the South Carolina, had been transferred to another prison in the South Carolina Department of Corrections instead of saying that he was released. So to her, he was still incarcerated, but he wasn't. He was out free, walking around. Now, she also received, the day after her murder, in her mail was a notice stating the same information that was incorrect, that he had been transferred to another prison instead of a message telling her that he was out walking around. Which is, like, terrible. Like, they get a letter in the mail the day after, and it's just like, oh shit. So all this time he's been running around, free as a bird. Nobody knew he was out. So she didn't take any precautions because she didn't know she had to. So the police start passing out his photo to all the cops at the scene. And they start canvassing the neighborhood, and all the people standing outside wondering what's going on, you know, seeing all the police tape. So they start showing this picture around, and they start finding out that Tennant, up until recently, had been walking around past that house about 14 times. He was spotted and talked to neighbors about what was going on. So he was, like, right there. Now, they knew he was still in the neighborhood, so they decided they're going to set a trap for him. So basically, they pull all the crime scene techs out, all the police, they pull them back. And they lock the house up. And they set a team outside to just stake it out and watch. And within 20 minutes of them all pulling back, Tennant comes walking down Trinidad Street, and the officers stop him and identify him as Tennent Brown. But now the problem is for Detective Goldstein to hold him. He has to prove that Tennant is not just a looky-loo trying to get a look at the scene or whatever, but that he's, you know, guilty of doing something. So he has to, like, talk to him. Now, As soon as he gets into the room with Tennant, Tennant wants nothing to do with him. He wants an attorney.
Oh, Dad's a lawyer, so.
Yeah, so the interview is terminated before it even starts. But, like, I know what you're thinking to yourself right now. Like, they don't have a case. What are they going to do?
I think they have plenty of
They're not
case.
going to talk to him. Like, they can't talk to him. They're going to have to rely on evidence. And, in particularly, the evidence found on him. Now, before I get into this evidence, I'm just going to tell you that this is what takes this case from just, like, crazy to, like, bizarre. Alright? So this is about to go sideways and get so crazy you're not even going to believe it. So in his possession, they find her house keys. So to check this, they take the keys. He sends an officer out with these keys, and they test the keys in her front door, and it unlocks the front door. So they know it's her keys. And on the keys is the panic button for her alarm system. Now, while at the police station, the police, took his belongings as evidence. And one of the officers looks at his ID and notices something strange.
It's her address.
It's her address.
Oh my God.
On the driver's license.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. So, yeah, they noticed it was her address. So, their theory is that he killed her in the morning and that he went and got a driver's license issued with her address that afternoon.
Try and live there.
Yeah. Now, the next thing is the most bizarre and disturbing thing I have ever heard. Now, they take the clothes that he's wearing as evidence, and they later identify them to be her clothing. He was wearing her underwear and a pair of her dress pants when he was arrested.
That's weird.
But there's more. Okay?
Okay.
There's more. Now, inside of her stolen car, which they find a few blocks from her house, which was stolen by Tennant, he left some strange evidence inside there, too. So inside of the car, they found numerous pieces of paper where he had practiced her signature.
He was going to try and take her
Drawn
identity
over and over again. And they said it was like hundreds of pages. And also, they find a 1-inch manifesto filled with strange ramblings and a plan for a new life after prison. It was the blueprints for her murder. So part of his plan was to take out a second mortgage on her house and live her life, basically. So it had everything in there from his grandmother's pudding recipe to plans for when he got out of prison to kill her. And in fact, here was like one of the things he wrote. He wrote ICE MLW, which were her initials.
Sounds very gangster.
They believed that he was angered by the fact that she was prosecuting him for breaking into her laundry room. And that his anger just got worse while he was in the Charleston County Jail. So when he got out on bond, he decided he was going to take his anger out on her. As the investigation continued, a FedEx package arrived at Mary Lynn's front door. It had been ordered by Tennant after he committed the murder. It had been charged to Mary Lynn's credit card. So the police open this package. Babe, can you look away from the screen? I don't want you to read it.
I already read it. I'm sorry.
In the box was a wig of her hair color, fake breasts, makeup for men, and a drag queen video, and then some other things that he would need to make him look more like a woman. And now police are starting to put together all these strange discoveries. And they start realizing that he wanted to be her. And he knew that he had to get rid of her first. Now, that box really starts making sense as they read further into his manifesto. They find phone numbers from doctors who performed gender reassignment surgeries. Written out in his manifesto, and those were all numbers that were outside of South Carolina. They were not local numbers. Now, police discovered a letter from Brown explicitly outlining his desire to change sexes. So it's crazy. Like, he's not sane. There's no way. This guy is just insane. Now, by the time the DNA results come back that confirm Tennent Brown is the killer of Mary Lynn Witherspoon, police have already pieced together a narrative of how they think her last moments went. So they believe that he attacked her as she was preparing for work in the morning. So either he knocked on, they believe that he knocked on the front door, that she opened it to converse with him, or he either forced his way in when she opened the door. It was clear that they struggled in the foyer, where she dropped her jewelry, her shoes, and her watch. And that he forcibly forced her upstairs, up this, and they fought on the stairs. So they found that the fourth, like the rung in the staircase, had been kicked out, indicating that she had been struggling with him as they went up the stairs. Now, once upstairs, he raped Mary Lynn, strangled her, and left her body in the tub. Then he went to the kitchen, cooked himself an egg for breakfast, and prepared to take over her property and her life as a woman. Now, Mary Lynn's family was left to wonder how this whole situation happened. Like, how did he get out of jail? Like, how is that even possible? Now, they start looking, the police start looking at that situation too. Like, how did that happen? So, in 2002, when he was incarcerated in 2002, he was evaluated and they found that he was bipolar. And later on, the decision was made that he also had gender dysmorphia, which is a confusion over what gender you are. So I guess it's like a transgender thing.
Yep, that would be it.
Yeah. And after his last arrest, he was assigned to the South Carolina's mental health court because he suffered from those two conditions. Now he was released on a conditional release, so he had provisions that he had to meet to be on release, and that was he had to go to counseling, and he had to have medical supervision, which he didn't have. He didn't have either of those. Nobody noticed that for months that he had been scrawling in this book, his agenda to murder Mary Lynn. And when he left jail on the 10th of November, they did not check his belongings because particularly his writings, because they said that they had no legal right to read his private papers. So he got to take all that out with him when he left the prison. And he was delivered to a outpatient mental health center. They took the handcuffs off, and he was free to go. He went in and talked to the mental health counselor, and then she released him only after he gave his address as Mary Lynn's address. So that's where he said he would be, was at Mary Lynn's address. So they were like shocked that he could just do that, and nobody, like, it didn't like send up any red flags. And they were like, well, he didn't, the mental health counselor, she didn't have his records. Like,
he also wasn't there for stalking. He wasn't there for doing anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that. He was there for breaking and entering.
Yeah. So she said after the interview, he could just leave. She made an appointment with him to come back on Wednesday, which he did not attend. He did not show up to that, which was a breach of his release. But nobody was watching him. Nobody was following him around. No, like he wasn't like at a halfway house. Like, nothing. He was like on the street, literally not living anywhere. Just walking around. Now, they find out all of that, and they're about to go to trial. So in 2004, Tennent Brown pled guilty. He was sentenced to life without parole. And the state would have sought the death penalty in this case, but the family just wanted to avoid a trial. They just wanted him to go to prison.
Seems fair enough.
Yeah. Now, what was really creepy though, it was like a little off, like the music. Oh, ooh. Okay, yeah. Now, because of this case, there were some changes made to laws. In fact, her sister and her daughter pushed a law called Mary Lynn's Law. And Mary Lynn's Law was basically meant to improve notification procedures, increase victims' rights, and provide stricter penalties for stalkers. And her sister Jackie was at the press conference with Governor Mark Sanford when he signed the bill into law on May 26, 2005. So the first provision was to prevent stalkers with certain offenses from being considered for diversionary programs, such as drug court programs or mental health court programs. It required that the Vine system and companies like it were to immediately update their system as soon as they received notifications from the from the Department of Corrections as to a prisoner's status. And this included immediate notification to the victims where prisoners were being released. And they made it so that it couldn't be an electronic call anymore. It had to be a living person making the phone call that could document in the system that somebody received that information. Like, they had to physically talk to somebody before they could stop calling. They also changed the legal definition of stalking and harassment under the law. Basically, that revision made it easier for the police to tell what was stalking and harassment, so that they could enforce those laws better. And they changed procedures for when courts ordered mental health evaluations and how those were carried out. That brings us to currently. What's going on current time right now for this guy. So even though Tennent Brown pled guilty in that trial in 2004, since then, he has asked for a new trial. He claims that he received inadequate representation by the public defender assigned to his case. He also claims that the emotional distress of suppressing his gender identity in court put him into a similar state like PMS and caused him to confess to crimes that he did not commit.
I had no idea that was a symptom of PMS.
Listen, I know plenty of women who PMS and then say, I'll kill you or something.
I done did it.
But I have never actually known a woman to actually kill somebody because she's going through PMS.
No. He confessed to the crimes because of his PMS. He's not saying he did it because of PMS. He confessed to his crimes because of it.
Yeah.
So next time you have PMS, babe, do not talk to police. Because you just tell them that you went and did all kinds of bad stuff you didn't do, apparently.
Yeah. So he also requested that the South Carolina Department of Corrections provide him with a gender-affirming plastic surgery, which is not allowed by South Carolina law.
100% sure in South Carolina that's not going to fly.
Yeah. So he changed his name. He's now Catherine Brown. Now, in a letter that he wrote to the Post and the Courier, he claimed that his lawyer insisted he hide his gender issues, his gender identity issues in court, and said, if I had been able to dress the way that I would have felt more, the way I wanted, I would have felt more confident. I would have dressed in a cream-colored Chanel skirt suit with a pair of 4.5-inch spiked Jimmy Choo heels and makeup.
That is way too specific. This guy has problems.
Yeah. Like, he had his entire outfit planned out.
I mean, like, far beyond, like, just the gender dysphoria.
Yeah. So, he also claimed that he was already using cross-sex hormones to feminize his appearance when he raped and strangled to death Mary Lynn. Which, the reason why he says that is so that basically South Carolina has a law where they must provide for prisoners that are brought into the system when they are brought in, if they are taking those hormones, that they will continue to provide them those in prison. So that's why he says that. He also insists that someone else must have seen him leave Mary Lynn's house and then confronted her about her upcoming move to Paris, France. Which is ridiculous. He repeatedly asked the state's Department of Corrections to allow him to complete his transition by providing him the gender reaffirming surgery He said in a quote, "I truly believe my outward appearance does not match or correspond with my inner self." He wrote in a letter to the DOC, "As a female, I would be complete and a productive member of society because I would actually be comfortable in my own skin." Like I said, note, South Carolina law does not prohibit the use of state funds for gender affirming procedures in prison. So yeah, that is what Mr. Tennent Brown is currently up to in prison. He is living his best prison life, I guess.
I was going to say something similar.
Yeah, so I didn't read anything like I did read he was beat up quite a bit when he first got into prison.
I was just about to say his prison life is not very nice.
Oh, I guarantee, yeah.
100% guaranteed.
Like, this woman was just, from everything that I read, she was an amazing person. She did not deserve what happened to her at all.
I mean, yeah, he's probably around, 50 years old right now, too? So.
Yeah. Well, Catherine. So, I was kind of torn with when I was typing this out. Like, I got to the article that said that he changed his name, and then I was like, oh, well, at that point, should I start referring to him as Catherine? And then I was like, no, the dirtbag don't deserve that. So I'm just going to go down with, that's all I have on Edmonds Tennent Brown IV. This dirtbag piece of shit who wants to give transgender people a bad name.
We're not going to go there.
Yeah. He's a horrible person. So, but that is everything I have on this case. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And, yeah, so I think we're going to close it out right there with that.
Sounds good to me.
All right, guys. Remember to stay sexy and don't get murdered.
See you next week.
Yep, see you guys next week for another interesting case of pastry killers, murders that went unnoticed.
Same bad time, same bad station.
Peace out, guys.